Oh boy. Literally on April Fool's Day, the Disc Golf Pro Tour drops the bombshell announcing sports betting is here, starting with Music City Open. And sadly, it is not a joke. People are obviously already livid at the Pro Tour. Will this be the tipping point where disc golf does hit mainstream? Or will it be a descent into corruption? Let's get into it.
Oh my. Are you serious?
So a few years back, there was betting on Prize Picks, and looking at it now, I believe Jeff has said that was actually not with the Pro Tour. It was a totally different thing that did their own betting, and so I think the Pro Tour did not like that one bit. So starting about 18 months ago, they started the process to officially have sports betting.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working on this project for about 18 months. It started with a contract with US Integrity. They kind of worked with us to find the right partners, ask the right questions, get a policy in place, get that policy adopted by our organization, the PDGA.
Partnering with NXT Bets, which includes Underdog Fantasy, DraftKings, which I actually couldn't find any lines as of right now, and Hold My Bag, which is hilarious. That's actually an official betting brand. But all of these provide official, real deal sports betting. And according to the Pro Tour, they stated, additionally, the tour has partnered with Alt Sports Data, the leading trading data provider for the action and alternative sports betting industry, to help pave the way for legal and official sports betting on the DGPT.
You know, Alt Sports Data sets the lines, so they do the line making and they put the odds out, and that can get picked up by, DraftKings or other sports books. Really, as an organization, we need to have, player policies on this, a compliance and an integrity monitoring program.
So as of right now, I think the limit is $100, and Jeff went on to say in the press conference that it's only going to be limited to that, at least for this current pilot year. So if you want to destroy your whole life with sports betting, just wait another year.
Hopefully opens up new eyes to look at disc golf, so we see it as an opportunity to grow the game and bring some more people in.
We feel like even if we aren't a link in this chain is becoming almost mandatory for us to do, because there are other fantasy sites out there and there are other ways to bet on the game.
So obviously you can kind of see where I stand. I'm very much against anything that is destructive and addictive, which sports betting obviously is. And there's just so many means of corruption for a sport that is as small as disc golf, and especially with players that have so little income that could be convinced by only like $10,000 to do something entirely corrupt. So for the Music City, the lines are live, and Jeff Springs said, we're excited about new ways for fans to engage in the sport and expanding the reach of disc golf. Cool. And he went on to say this.
This is just like another step, I think, in that journey. We expect it to help viewership, help awareness, help with partnerships, and then hopefully just help the economics of the sport. That's why we've taken, basically over 18 months here to go step by step.
And he does state that the Pro Tour has nothing to do with the lines and is entirely with IC360 and Alt Data to set the lines. But if the Pro Tour is sourcing the data, who's going to tell these betting people that a lot of this data is invalid at best? Besides the actual score, there's been so many parts of scorekeeping that has been totally inaccurate. With almost every tournament, there was somebody having a throw in from like 400 feet, which did not happen. And not only that, but for so many scores, there actually was no scorekeeper. So how can you have valid scoring data if there's no scorekeeper? Having said that, all the lines currently are just on placement. So I think the current line for Kristen's like over under second place. But to me, this is just the tip of the iceberg that this sport is just too small to not be led with a bit of corruption. And maybe not even corruption and malice, but just incompetence. And so let's go back to where I believe this all started. It was about 18 months ago where Jeff Spring mentioned this.
When we talked to you at the beginning of this year, Jeff, you said that you thought that the tour was going to turn a profit this year. Did that happen?
Not quite. It has been hard, Josh.
And if you recall, we lost the best scoring on UDisc, and I believe this was all due to selling the data to sports gambling companies. And also 6 months ago, they started a policy stating that the DGPT prohibits any employees, touring pros, coaches, and event staff from wagering on disc golf. So that's something. And as of right now, I believe the only betting is done on the top 10 pros. So while it might totally be valid, my reading between the lines and general distrust of Jeff Spring, all I hear is this.
Hello, I like money.
What inspired you to build a second Krusty Krab right next door to the original?
Money.
And honestly, I just feel like it is a bit of a scapegoat. There are so many other sites doing disc golf betting, so it's in our best interest to just do it. We can make it safe and secure, but like, you could, doesn't mean you are. And it is not just me that has a general distrust. This is what the fans said. One Redditor said, sports betting is a disaster, it ruins lives, which I believe leads to the addiction argument. And I believe this to be wholeheartedly true. I believe betting can become so addictive, and when you get into a deep hole, the only thing you want to do is bet more to get out of that hole. And there's been reports like the Associated Press that have claimed young men are the most at risk of addiction to sports gambling, which is predominantly the demo of DGN. Another person said, what will prevent mid-level players from betting on themselves? Disc golf lacks enough money for it to be trustworthy. And sure, you can have the policy that like nobody on tour can bet, but like I can bet. I'm not at all associated with the Disc Golf Pro Tour, but I surely have a lot more information than others. And let's say you're a friend of somebody on the Pro Tour. Can you bet? Probably yes. I bet you have a lot more information than others. And there were so many other posts. In a sport where a lot of athletes are legit paying their own way and sometimes not even breaking even, this is a surefire way to have somebody betting on their own line. If people barely make anything and gambling gets involved, it is a hotbed. Yes, 100%. And we had people like Hunter from Foundation, which I like. I generally think he makes good decisions. But he posted his picks on Twitter and gave a referral code, which like, just read the room, probably not the best time to do it. And people were not too happy. With other people stating, keep it pure as long as possible, grow the sport. Other people stating, terrible idea. How much can one really bet when the payout for first place is less than 30K? And I love this point so much. There is so many reasons for people to do nefarious things when the incentives for these tournaments are so low. And you could make the argument, well, these events have so much higher potential to make a lot more money, have a lot higher payouts if they get that betting income. Honestly, yes, 100% that is totally true. But at what cost if the whole feeling around the sport becomes way more focused on gambling and not disc golf? And I'm not surprised, but Ricky did think pretty favorably, stating, does everyone think that betting is good for professional disc golf as a whole? And I think this reply was probably the best. On one hand, it drives interest, viewership. On the other hand, it's too small and an individual sport where players can easily be paid off to throw a match or to win within the spread. Overall, I think it'd be a negative as disc golf is too small and many players are struggling for cash. Yes, this is probably my favorite. When can I place a bet on how bad gambling will be for disc golf? And you had another person making the amazing point, this is a self-officiated game. So if people are betting on themselves in a roundabout way, they have so many incentives to make the calls that are not in the actual best interest. And they're posted on April Fool's Day. Just great stuff. And here's the last point I want to bring up. People just don't want to hear about your endless lines.
Nobody cares.
And if you cash on a bet or not, making a Pro Tour stream, having all the lines as part of the entire stream would be miserable. And basically nobody wants that. I'm not saying that's how it is currently, but there's definitely a world where it becomes that. With the #1 post on Reddit saying, shame on the DGPT. Sports betting is a disaster, it ruins lives. Just another sellout at the cost of the collective. I mean, fans already overanalyze every shot, so betting's just gonna make it worse. And imagine missing a putt and people are actually accusing you of throwing for cash. This might become the new reality, which is super lame. And like this person said, the casualness of the sport is what attracts so many people. Throwing gambling in the mix is, at least to me, only gonna be destructive. And I wanna reiterate, so many people on tour are either breaking even or just barely making enough to save just a little bit. So they could easily be persuaded, at least in my opinion. And so because of this, I feel like betting is a betrayal. But let's talk about the positives and why I think this might have been inevitable. So at least in my opinion, I think the Pro Tour, according to Jeff Spring, was not profitable. I believe Todd Rainwater was potentially the main person pushing for sports betting. It is obviously going to generate a lot of profit, and since he is the main shareholder of the Pro Tour and has contributed a lot of his own money, he wants to see a profit. And I think even right now, the Pro Tour is at best break even. Could be wrong in that, but that's what I believe. And so if you are Todd, you want to ensure your investment is not going to tank, even if it means the necessary evil of sports betting. Now that is totally projection, maybe that is not the case. And some fans did have some positive things. Disc Golf Fanatic stating, I'm sure it'll lead to a lot more money, bigger purses, bigger sponsorships, more tournaments, and probably more international growth. And maybe the Pro Tour will be able to pay off all their debt because they had to invest in a lot of equipment to make this whole stream work. And I believe they added a couple more people on their staff this year. So hopefully this means they can at least pay off all their debt. And at best, maybe all these players can get a guaranteed payment for being on the tour and having a tour card. That would do tremendous things for certainty and continuation on the Pro Tour, knowing that they wouldn't have to live in absolute poverty. And every event could probably have a lot more cash to run the event and to give for payouts, but at what cost? With other people stating, this is a trial to grow the sport. Let's see how it works before assuming the worst case scenario. And you have other people arguing that it brought legitimacy to golf and tennis. And while I believe that is true, there are also tons of scandals for both sports about people that did rig certain events, and the payouts for those are tremendously more than disc golf could ever be. The lowest paid payout on the worst event on the PGA Tour is way more than the Pro Tour Championship payout for first place. So the potential for corruption, I believe, is still way higher. So having said that, is sports gambling going to ruin disc golf? Obviously it's too early to say, but I believe it's being very much downplayed by Jeff as just a small addition. And sure, there are a couple of risks and factors at play, but we have so many things in place to ensure it's fair betting, and it's only going to be for like placement of players for now. But what do you think? Do you see the world of disc golf being corrupted by betting, or at least being overrun by lines and bets for the entirety of streams? Or are you on the total opposite end where you're just excited to bet on disc golf? I'd love to know. So with that, be sure to subscribe. Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.